So welcome. It's so good to see all of you. I'm glad that you're here. This is the natural, healthy, evidence-based ways to improve memory and prevent dementia. And I'm your host, Susan Gibson. I don't know what kind of mother you had. I was blessed with a really good mom. I told my mom everything. I considered her to be my best friend. I told her conversations I'd had with dates, things at work, everything. And then one day she said, "Who are you?" And when I told her I was her daughter, she said, "Am I going to have a bunch of other people showing up saying they're my kids too?" She didn't remember anything about me. Poof, all those conversations, gone. My mom had dementia. And now I have a passion for improving memory for other people. It's my mission. I know the devastation that memory loss can cause, not only for the person with the memory loss, but for everyone around them. This is my mother. Can you see the slide?
No, not yet.
There you go. Is that the full slide?
Yeah, but that's you.
There we go. That's my precious mother. And
No,
that's actually
no, that's
when
you.
it's
It's
still
you,
on
Susan.
me.
It's a slide of you.
Okay. There we go.
There she is.
All right. That's my precious mom. And this is actually before she was in the memory ward, before she got really bad.
She's beautiful.
Yeah, she was a very good mother. And I am very intent now that you don't go through what my mother went through. I don't want you to even go through what I went through, or what my 88-year-old father went through being her primary caregiver, which can be even harder than being the person that has dementia. So I have a passion for making a difference in lives. This is my area of background. By training, I am a pharmacist, so I'm used to researching options. I have a Harvard MBA, and for 30 years, I worked at pharmaceutical and medical device companies, helping to discover new products. And I founded Vivalor to find solutions, because we need solutions. We need hope. And the medical community currently doesn't offer much hope. And that's my mission, to make a difference in lives. I've been on TV, radio, podcasts talking about this, and I feel like there's a huge unmet need. And that's what we're here to talk about today. We call it healthy and natural because everything we're going to talk about, all of the recommendations and solutions, are healthy, natural things. There's no side effects. We're not going to talk about drugs or manipulations. These are all things that are good for you. And evidence-based because there is a lot of evidence. There are scientific studies, and I'm kind of a data freak, and I am going to talk about some of the studies, hopefully not to bore you, but so that you leave completely convinced that this is not just, oh, it might help. There are lots of data showing that the recommendations we're going to talk about will make a difference. And we'll explore whether they help when you have no memory loss, whether they help after you have some memory loss, whether they can even help if you have dementia. What all do you need to do? How much can you expect it to help? That's what we're going to cover today. So how many of you feel like dementia is preventable? Your basic understanding, raise your hand if you think dementia is preventable.
Figure out how to raise my hand.
Or just speak, because I haven't muted you.
Well, I know you, so yes.
So how many of you feel like you've been told that there aren't very many options or there isn't very much hope?
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Well, there is hope. This is a little shocking, but this article here is in the National Institutes of Health, and they looked at the various different causes of dementia, and they believe that up to 50% of the cases of dementia could be prevented. Do you hear people talking about this?
No.
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 That's a lot, half of the cases. So there is hope, and that's what we're here to talk about today. What is the hope, and what are the actions that you can take that will make a difference in your memory now and potentially in preventing dementia down the road? So here's what we're going to cover today. This is a 5-day series, and today we'll talk a little bit about memory loss and dementia themselves. We'll talk about how they happen, what are the risk factors, what are the options for treating it. We'll talk a little bit about my own story, and we'll look at the proprietary formula that I have for the main categories of things that you can do to address your memory and improve your memory. You should have received an email from me already with some brain tests. Those are optional, but it's nice to have a baseline understanding of your cognitive performance. The links that I sent only take about 5 minutes, and we'll also be looking at some brain health and habits questionnaire at the end today. And in each of the successive days, we're going to cover the letters of the proprietary FAST formula. So F stands for food. This is ways that you can improve your diet, specifically foods that are good for your brain and foods to avoid for your brain. We'll look at activity, stress, sleep, treating the diseases that are revving up the pathology of memory loss, and we'll look at thoughts. Being positive and optimistic can make a difference, and then take action. So there's going to be homework. I want this to be interactive. I want you to be involved. And here is, memory loss is already a huge problem. Dementia, there's almost 6 million cases of dementia in the US and 50 million worldwide. And that is expected to triple by 2050. Because with the aging of the population, this is going to be a huge problem. And as we discussed, having dementia and memory loss is not just a problem for the person with the memory loss. It is a full-time job for the person taking care of the person with memory loss as well. My dad could not leave my mom alone for a minute. They were in a retirement community, but if he was in the room next door, if she could not see him, she freaked out and got upset because she couldn't remember that he was only a few feet away. So this is not only an issue for the person, but this is an issue for our country. I believe this is a national health crisis. The current economic cost estimates are 290 billion in the US and $1 trillion globally. And this does not even count the costs of these free caregivers. There's 16 million people giving free healthcare that's not counted for, free caregiving in the US. 18 billion hours of caregiving that aren't even counted in these economic costs. And people often have to quit their jobs or reduce their jobs and reduce the other areas of their life to care for their loved one. So this is not only a huge problem, a devastating problem, but it is a growing problem. So how likely are you to get dementia? So this is dementia. This is diagnosable dementia. And 1 in 10 people over age 65 have dementia. And if you are in your 60s or older, it is really worth paying attention to your brain health, because your risk doubles every 5 years after age 65. And some of the statistics show that 1 in 2 people age 85 and older have dementia. So there's a natural, they call it natural, memory loss that occurs with age. Because it's so typical, it is commonly seen. That doesn't mean that they're moving all the way to dementia, but even in those who don't have dementia, there is generally some decline in memory over time. So one of the most common questions I get when I speak about this is, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? We tend to use those words really interchangeably, and there's some reason for that. There are times when they are pretty interchangeable, but they are not the same. So dementia is a group of symptoms or a syndrome. So it is significant memory loss, but not just memory loss. In order for it to be dementia, there's changes in personality, changes in judgment, and it has to be severe enough that it's impacting the daily functions of the individual. So it's impacting their ability to get dressed, their ability to carry on life independently. So dementia is both the term used for these group of symptoms, and it's also the term used for a broader disease category. And Alzheimer's is a specific type of dementia with a specific type of pathology. But Alzheimer's is by far the largest type of dementia. 70% of all of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. So in that 70%, using the term dementia and using the term Alzheimer's is pretty interchangeable. But the term dementia does include additional dementias. There's vascular dementia, which is often caused by hypertension or a stroke. It's when the blood vessels in your brain are contributing to the dementia and need to be addressed. The dementia symptoms, though, are similar to Alzheimer's in the memory loss, personality changes, and judgment issues. Lewy body dementia is a complication of Parkinson's, and frontotemporal dementia, that's what we all really hope we won't get. It's the frontotemporal lobe of the brain that has the lesions that are causing the dementia, and that part of the brain is responsible for behavior. So people who get frontotemporal dementia can be very violent, aggressive, angry, throw their caregivers across the room. It can be a little hard to get help when you treat your caregivers that way. So how many of you know someone who has dementia? Just say yes if you do.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you know.
My mother died from it.
Oh, she did. Oh, I'm so sorry, Donna. So another question is, well, what's the difference between memory loss and dementia? And generally it's a degree, it's a severity. So normal memory loss is, I don't know where I put my keys, why'd I come into this room? You see when someone has moved to dementia, repeating the stories. Short-term memory is usually the first thing to go, but that is only the very beginning. As with my mom, eventually long-term memory goes. When she did not know anything about me, that is, her entire memory is gone. But your brain is the most important thing in your body. It controls everything you do. It's probably the most complex thing in all of creation. And because of that, when your brain isn't working, it impacts every area. And depression is very common. It's actually a cause of dementia and is certainly a result of the dementia as well. But hallucinations and paranoia are common. My mom used to talk about the man behind the chair and just make up things. Someone stole my jewelry and broke into our place the other day. That's quite common. and the paranoia, that believing that people are out to get you or after you. The emotional instability is also quite common. It may not be as extreme in some cases of dementia as in the frontotemporal dementia, but people are not themselves. I had to come to the realization that my mom's body was still there, but that was not my mother. Her reactions, the way she behaved, the things she said, her brain didn't work. But it's very difficult on relationships because the person is still present, but it's quite common that they're agitated and can even be very offensive. And muscle control goes, it's difficult to balance. It can impact, in the later stages, talking and even swallowing. Swallowing is one of the most complicated things that we do. I don't think a lot of people think about incontinence, but it is actually one of the symptoms from the dementia, from the lack of control coming from the brain, and it can result in death. So how many of you think of Alzheimer's as a deadly disease?
I do.
Yeah, Carolyn has been with a lot of people who have dementia, so she knows. I don't think we think in our society of it very much that way, but it is hugely deadly. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the US. And it's the only disease in the top 10 diseases that has nothing that the medical community has to cure it or prevent it or slow it. That's why the medical community remains relatively hopeless about the concept. And the deaths have been increasing over time, whereas the medical community has found solutions to many other diseases like heart disease, where the deaths are declining. And I thought it was kind of a shocking statistic that dementia causes more deaths than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined.
Wow.
Oops. So that's dementia. If someone progresses all the way to dementia, what about just memory loss? How common is just plain old memory loss? Well, it's quite common. 13% of Americans age 60 plus report it, and many of them say that it's interfering with their work, their abilities to do things around the house, but most people don't talk to their doctor about it. They're embarrassed. They're also not very aware of their own cognitive performance, and it seems to bother those who want to be active much more than it bothers those once they're older and not expecting to do quite as much in life. But this increase in memory loss comes from a couple different things. One is the life expectancy has increased significantly lately, and more people are working later. So they're trying to stay active and functional during years where the typical memory loss is increasing in its commonality. So what actually happens with memory loss? They don't totally understand the exact order of what happens, and this is something that there's a lot of scientific work right now. But they do know that all types of dementia include inflammation in the brain. They include free radicals or oxidation. These free radicals are attacking and damaging the various parts of the brain. There's difficulty in processing sugar, and then you get insulin insensitivity. So this is similar to diabetes in the body. And in fact, they call Alzheimer's disease diabetes of the brain, and a poor lipid profile. But did you know that your neurons start dying probably 20 years before your first memory loss symptom? What you're doing in your 40s and 50s impacts greatly your risk of getting dementia in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. So this is relevant for everyone. And if you're even younger than that, you probably have parents or grandparents for which this is relevant, but you can't start too early with caring about your brain and investing in your brain health. So these neurons start dying. You have less and less neurons. You get plaques on the neurons and in the neurons so that they're not sending the signals and communicating. And your brain actually starts shrinking. It can be half the size that it was before by the time you get memory loss and dementia. So you don't get symptoms until many decades after this process has started. So this is all the more reason to invest. And my objective today is not to scare you, because fear doesn't benefit anything. But I hope that you will be committed, like I am, to seeing how important your brain is and how important it is to invest in your brain. There's time to make a difference. And you can even make a difference after you've progressed. Conventional medical wisdom is that once you've progressed down this slippery slope and the pathology is there, that there's not much that can be done. But we will look at this because there's plenty of data that there are still lots of things that can be done, even if you have progressed to the stages of dementia and Alzheimer's. So what is the #1 risk for dementia? Who knows?
Heredity.
Heredity is a huge one. Yes. Yes. Your genes and your family history. Yep.
Diabetes.
Diabetes is a big risk factor.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Those are all good ones. Yes.
Age.
Age. Age is actually the #1 risk factor. Now, we don't want the opposite option, because if you're not getting older, that's not good. But age is by far the biggest risk factor. That's what we've been talking about. As you're getting older, your risk is increasing. These are a couple of risk factors that we can't do anything about. The aging, your genetics. There's actually a gene called an ApoE4 gene that is carries risk of dementia. If you have one of those genes or alleles, you are 4 times more likely to get dementia than someone without those genes. If you have both of them, you're 12 times more likely. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll get it, but you're more likely to get it. Again, something we can't change. And family history increases your risk a lot. These are massive risk increases, massive risk increases. And these tell us, okay, if you have these, you should really be investing. If you have any family member that had dementia or memory loss, I'm glad you're here, because this is the place for us to talk about and learn about what can be done. There's a lot of other diseases that also impact your risk for dementia. So how many of you think that the things that you can do to improve health for your brain are going to be pretty different from what you do to improve overall health for your body?
No.
No, they're pretty similar, because your body and your brain are very tight. We're going to talk specifically about things that are good for your brain, but everything that's impacting your body also tends to impact your brain. And this is a long list of diseases that increase your risk of dementia and that rev up the pathology that's leading to the memory loss. So it's really important to address these. We mentioned that stroke can be an additional risk in vascular dementia, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, and again, your health in your 40s and 50s with these diseases drives your risk even more than whether you're managing your diabetes or your hypertension or your cardiovascular disease in your 60s and 70s. And these risks, these are 2 times to 4 times the risk as if you don't have any of these diseases. So lots of times when you're in the pharmaceutical space, we're talking about an increased risk of 20% more, and you're still addressing it and doing things about it. These are huge risk factors. And what we'll be talking about and suggesting is, yes, get them diagnosed. If you have any indication that you might have an issue, attend to it, take what's recommended by your physician. But I would hope you won't stop there, because I know some people that take their antihypertensive and get their blood pressure in the right range, and then they feel like they don't need to exercise or eat healthy or do something else because they're in range. Same thing with their diabetes. Well, if I'm going to eat the candy bar, I just increase my insulin to put that sugar in storage. I can keep my numbers in range. But we want to look at more fundamental health that is addressing the underlying issues, not just keeping your numbers in place. But if you have any of these other diseases or conditions, it makes it all that much more important that you address your brain health and really invest in it. These are summarizations of the literature of rates of increase in dementia that were seen in studies and publications. And here's a few that still increase your risk. I wouldn't worry too much about the numbers. These are still high risk. Some things like obesity, they separated out. What's the risk of the hypertension? What's the risk of the cardiovascular disease? What's the risk of the diabetes? And separate that out from the additional risk that's posed just from the obesity itself. But again, all of these things, stress, physical inactivity, lack of social activity, these contribute to your risk as well. So what happens if you go to a doctor and you say, I have memory loss? What do they usually say? Anybody?
Get on some Aricept.
Yeah, they don't have very many options.
Yeah.
I am a healthcare professional. I spent 35 years in traditional Western medicine, so I'm not in any way denigrating traditional Western medicine. And they have a place here. In my experience, physicians typically have less than 4 hours of nutritional training in their entire medical careers. And by and large, prevention and health promotion and nutrition are not really what they consider to be the mainstay of their job. Diagnosing disease and treating disease is more their job. So about the only thing that the medical community tends to recommend is the products, the drugs that are indicated, FDA approved for the treatment of dementia, and they will give those earlier in memory loss. But these drugs don't do anything to address the underlying disease. They don't slow down the pathology, they don't slow the progression, they only treat the symptoms. And your cognition is declining. They know it's declining. Even on drug, your cognition continues to decline. It just declines at a slightly slower rate on drug than off drug. And these only work in a certain number of people and in a certain stage. They become less and less effective over time. They do have some somewhat significant side effects. They do work some in some people, although in many people the effects are not really very noticeable. And some people may stay on them a few months or a few years. And when you are first diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, people are often tried on these. But again, they're not impacting the underlying disease. And the pharmaceutical world has tried and is trying. There's hundreds of products in development that have failed. It has the highest failure rate of any area of the pharmaceutical industry, 99.6% failure rate of drugs that are pursuing Alzheimer's as a treatment option. And the Alzheimer's Association has actually said that if and when a drug is approved, you will still need to recommend that the patient employs lifestyle changes. So all of the things we're going to talk about are going to be a part of the prescription, even if something else is identified. So what I am recommending is my proprietary FAST formula. And this is what the literature and the experts have identified as the most impactful areas of what can be done. these are not the only things that can be done, not by a long stretch, but we have 5 days together and we won't cover everything that can be done. There's a lot that can be done. And there's many things that I could be doing with my time right now. I'm doing this because I feel like this is missing, that we don't have people out here talking about the fact that there is hope, talking about what can be done. So we're going to go through these different areas and look at a couple different categories of what can be done in terms of diet, different kinds of activity, exercise, as well as brain activity, as well as socialization. We're going to come up with suggestions. I'm open to your suggestions as well. If people have creative things that they've done that have helped to reduce stress or improve their sleeping and help them get more sleep, treating diseases and thoughts. And again, this is not medical advice, but this is, you will be hearing more and more of this even from the medical community over time, because these are such powerful levers. They really do make a difference in your brain health. Does anyone have any questions?
You're doing good.
Please.
So my objective today, so how many of you would say that you're interested, you understand your brain's important, and yeah, you know, I understand that I should do something about it, but I'm not all that motivated, perfectly honest. And how many of you really feel like, man, I get it, I am so motivated, I am going to do what it takes?
From now on.
From now on. How many of you would say, I am committed, I'm going to do what it takes?
I'm committed. I've been doing stuff, eating, you know, less sugar, more veggies. I don't eat processed foods for the most part. I'm exercising 6 days a week.
Wow, Donna, good for you.
Reducing stress, getting good sleep, and helping others where possible also in these areas.
That is fantastic.
Susan, I have a question.
Yes.
I wanted to find out, I started this luminosity. I don't know, are you familiar with that?
Yes.
I love it. And it's
Yeah.
just, it stimulates your brain every day and you just progress and you progress. So that's fun for me, and it helps me keep my mind going, you know, like.
That's
So.
Yes, that's awesome, Tyra. So Lumosity is one of the websites that has brain training. So for the activity piece, when we're talking about keeping your brain active, there's lots of different things you can do. And some companies have tiers of different things that you can practice every day. That's great. You've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have.
Good. Yeah.
Like pain.
Yes, it's interesting and fun. And that's what we want with all of these things. Find ways to make it a part of your lifestyle. Intriguingly, the acronym is FAST. Which doesn't necessarily mean that the changes come quickly, although there are many cases of people who changed their lifestyle and had some very rapid changes in their health. But it is intended to be a lifestyle change. So that's exactly what we want to do together, is how do we identify things that we enjoy, that we actually can incorporate, and go step by step. However healthy you are right now, how do you take that to the next step? Is that an area that you want to take to the next step? What are ways that you might do that? And that's what we're going to be brainstorming on.
I'm looking to study a new language, and because you know, and my sister's studying piano right now. She's a couple of years older than me, and I was, you know, just reading that doing something new, even though you're awkward at it and clumsy at it, that's actually perfect because it stimulates more blood flow to the brain, and, you know, new synapses and dendrites and connections, and creates a brain reserve.
Yes, exactly. You're good, Donna.
It just encouraged me. I want to learn to play the piano.
Do it.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
this wonderful program that you can get that will help you to learn. And I'll find out what my sister's doing, and I'll share it with Susan, and she can give it to you. It's really great. She's working on a little electric piano, and she loves it. And that so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it doesn't even have to take additional time. Donna's exactly right, that anything, we are building new neurons all the time. And anything that challenges your brain and is outside of your usual habits can help to keep those neurons firing and keep laying down neurons. So even brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, I mean, you have ways that you've learned to do things, combing your hair, whatever, small changes, it's a little awkward. You're not, so your brain has to engage to figure it out. But yes, learning a new instrument or a language, those are fantastic for keeping your brain stimulated. Those are great. What would you all most like to get out of this series?
I'm learning every time you open your mouth, you give me new stuff. So I'm excited about this week.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, I mean, I knew absolutely nothing about dementia until joining. So all the information you provided so far has been astonishing, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't realize all these numbers and the billions of dollars and trillions of dollars that are being spent on this, and I've never heard anything about it anywhere.
That is really interesting. You know, there's oncology centers all over the place. And part of that is because there's lots of oncology drugs, lots of options. So the medical community has created centers around that because there's a lot to know, there's lots of options. You don't see very many brain health centers. And that's because the medical community doesn't feel like they have a lot of options. And many of these things are not like income generating, but this is a huge problem. One of the biggest unmet medical needs that we have, but because it doesn't fit in as well into our conventional methods and doesn't have as many solutions, there aren't as many places. Again, that's why I have a passion for it. That's why I'm here doing this, is to help people to have tools, to help each other, whether, and I'm looking at the end of this for additional ideas for what do you need to take this to the next level? Do you want little support groups where you're encouraging each other and holding each other accountable? You know, what are all the things that can be done? This is step one. Let's provide some information, hopefully get you encouraged and enthusiastic about investing in your brain. But where do you go from there? I don't know if anyone has thoughts on, once we provide the information so you know what to do, what helps you in changing your patterns?
Well, I have a question. My mom was on hospice here at my house living with me, and the chaplain would come, and I always thought Alzheimer's was something that you're gone, you know, completely gone, like in a short amount of time. Well, she lived 4.5 years with that. And I mean, it was horrible for him. And so he would share his stories with my mom and I about his experience with her. And, you know, it is an awful disease. And I thought from what he said that dementia goes into Alzheimer's, but from what I'm gathering from you, it's separate. It's different?
Well, it's often perceived that way because it's very difficult to actually diagnose Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, okay.
So this is another challenge. In many other disease states, there's a blood test or some kind of test that identifies who has it and who doesn't. And they can do scans of your brain, but that's expensive, so they don't usually do it. So the actual diagnosis is typically based on cognitive function and decline in your cognitive function. So in practice, people will call it dementia because that is not as technical a medical diagnostic term. And they wait until that's progressed a long way before they'll say, yeah, it's actually Alzheimer's. But most of that is just an artifact of not having good diagnostic information.
Oh, okay.
But I do see exactly what you're saying in common practice, that they'll call it dementia and say it's not Alzheimer's yet. They don't really know for sure if you have Alzheimer's until you die and they do an autopsy. And
Oh,
even
really?
then, what they're looking at is the beta amyloid plaques on the neurons. And there's actually some controversy now because the beta amyloid plaques are the target that the majority of the pharmaceutical companies have been pursuing. And those drugs have failed. Now, the medical community still uses the beta amyloid plaques as the #1 diagnostic method for determining whether you have Alzheimer's or not. But there's actually not a correlation between reducing your plaques and improving your cognitive performance. So there's still a big scientific question here as to what is actually going on, but that's the only thing they have to use. So that's
Wow.
what they're using. There's a lot of money being spent scientifically now, but for the how common dementia is, scientifically, we don't understand it very well. And that's part of the reason that there's so much difficulty in coming up with treatments, because it's a very complex disease. There's lots of different things that are going on, and it interacts with a lot of other conditions as well.
I was interested in like learning whether certain mushroom tinctures would be good for the brain, because I know some mushrooms are pretty powerful, and I was wondering what you knew about that.
Yeah, there are some. There's one in particular called lion's mane mushroom that has some excellent cognitive data on improvements in cognition. So one of the things, I actually created a mega supplement as a part of my process here. I read all of the literature on all of the supplements and which ones have data that they're impacting some of the underlying causes, as well as have data that they improve cognition, improve memory, improve processing speed and focus. And lion's mane mushroom is a very powerful one. My supplement has over 5,000 milligrams of nutrients in it. So it is a mega supplement. It's 5 to 20 times the amount of supplementation of any of the other supplements on the market, specifically because I really want to provide those nutrients. People, even if they're eating healthy, they're not getting all of the nutrients they need, and there's no downside to many of these supplements that are generally regarded as safe by the FDA. So yes, I mean, lion's mane mushroom is probably the biggest one that you hear of. Yeah.
So with Hashimoto's, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and one of them is the brain fog, which I realize and so does my children recognize that as well. So with that kind of supplement, you would be able to, it would help. Would that help with the Hashimoto's and the brain part of it?
So it could potentially help with the brain fog. With supplements, we want to be careful not to say that that's actually treating the disease, because in order to talk about treating a disease, you have to go through the 12 to 19 years of research and spend on average $2.6 billion, which is the typical cost of developing a pharmaceutical. So in order to talk about treating Hashimoto's or something, it would not address the Hashimoto's itself or the underlying thyroid issues, but it absolutely could help your brain function, the brain fog, your focus and processing speed and things. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So does anyone have, talking about lifestyle change and changes in eating habits and exercise are challenging because many people have tried to do that before. Do any of you have things that have worked well in terms of changing your habits? from an eating standpoint or an exercise standpoint?
Well, for me, for exercise, I thought I could do it on my own. It's like, okay, I can do it. But you know what? I finally said, you know what? It's much better if I take a class. It's much better if I'm held accountable in some way.
Yep.
And I mean, I'd never exercised 6 days a week. And it's only been since I've taken a class and committed to doing that and being held accountable. So,
Are you
yeah.
doing it online?
Pardon?
Are you doing it online?
Yes, I'm doing it online because, yeah, I can't go to the gym now. I can't go to the
Right.
yoga studio. But
That's-
yes, I you know, before though, I went to the yoga studio and signed up at a gym and signed up with a trainer because I knew I needed to be accountable to,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's really good. I'm not sure that everyone comes to the point. I think we all tend to do that. Well, I can do this. I can do this on my own. But it happens a lot better when you do it in community. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's
I think
good.
something else important when you're trying to change your diet or starting to exercise more is to stick to something for the long term, because a lot of people just jump into like an extreme diet.
Yep.
That's only going to last temporary, or
Yep.
they start a workout because they want to lose weight, for example, but they don't like the workout. So after a few weeks or a few months, they'll just give up. And I mean, I'm prone to that as well. So it's finding the right balance and changing your entire lifestyle around it. So if you need to do cardio, but you absolutely despise running, don't run. Find something else that you prefer, like swimming or different kind of aerobics activities. And that way you can stick to it for the long term.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Things you enjoy. Yes. Anybody else have
You know, I'd
anything
like
that
to
they've done that
throw
works?
in here, having a, first, I think internally, so having a purpose. Why am I doing this? What is moving me every day to do this? And if that purpose is front and center in my world, then I find I'll stay with it. So, I mean, lifestyle changes, everybody talks about lifestyle changes, but what isn't talked about so often, I think the question you're trying to get to, Susan, is motivation. What motivates you? What's the driving energy behind you to do this? So anyway, the short answer is purpose. What's my purpose?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that motivation, right. So what does take you from, yes, this is a nice thing to do, I can see the importance of it, to really having that commitment? I am going to invest. I'm going to do what it takes, whatever it takes.
Accountability, man. Gonna get kicked.
So if somebody's with you, you're part of community, that helps to motivate you.
Yep.
That's good. And you have to desire it enough to commit to someone to be accountable.
Yeah, I agree with Richard. It's like having a purpose. You know, for me, it was like, I am sitting on my ass too much. This does not feel good. I want to feel good.
Yes.
And I want to change. I want to be more of who I am. And and then having a community that supports me in that is key. But first it was like, I got to choose change, and being willing to get out of my comfort zone in that regard, because I was comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, but I wasn't really happy. You know, there was a joy. I had certain joys, but I knew I wasn't living up to the possibilities of who I could be.
Yeah. Awesome.
I think you just mentioned probably the most important word here, and that's change. I think we have a love-hate relationship with change. We sort of know that change is important, but wow, trying to plow it into our lifestyle, that's another thing.
Yeah. I had to make it my
Some change.
What was that?
I said I had to make it my VSP to get my butt in gear and exercise 5 days a week and all that. So I made it just, otherwise, you know, it's just I had my reasons. Oh, my knee hurts,
Yeah.
this or that. So I just went in and made it my VSP, and so I got to do it.
So having a community, making a commitment, and having accountability
Correct.
that someone's paying attention and cares and is doing it with you. Because we think we can do it by ourselves at first, but to keep committing to it for the long term, you got to have that motivation, that purpose, that passion.
There's also a negative side of motivation. The fear of loss often motivates people. I've never had a great memory. I had chronic depression from about age of 50 to 55. And I know that I lost stuff, but I've been on the Glory Day for 8 or 9 or 10 months now. And I know for a fact that it does help. I have several markers that, you know, things I could not do before that I can do now. Also, the other motivation is my father-in-law died of Alzheimer's, and my mother-in-law is in a hospital right now, and she's not, you know, she's not there anymore. So I don't want any of those things to happen to me. And it also means my wife has that genetic predisposition. So that's going to be something for me to motivate me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Larry. And you said that you've noticed differences on Glory Day Brain Booster.
Yes. One of the markers was the ability to do mathematical calculations in my head the way I used to when I was a kid. Also to remember names. I was never good at names, but I've definitely noticed a greater ability for that. That's just 2 markers that have definitely helped.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's so encouraging. Warms my heart. And Dr. Johnson, I mean, it's such an honor to have Richard Johnson on here. He's been the biggest godsend to me. He's a behavioral psychologist and gerontologist, and he's written 2 books on Glory Day Brain Booster that are about to be released. Just one of the most amazing men I've known. I don't know if you want to comment, Richard, also. I know you've had.
Well, it's been an honor to do that. I didn't start out to write books on this, although that's what I do. So I am a gerontologist and a psychologist. I've worked in 15 years in the medical community, and I've seen the tragedy of all kinds of dementias out here. So I wanted to see what this Glory Day Brain Booster was about. So I really investigated the ingredients of it. And I've never done that before, looking at supplements, because I was so pharma focused. But looking at these, I was just so impressed and inspired. So I asked myself, well, why would I even want to take this? I have memory as part of the thing, but other things that I was interested to, including mood. And anyway, I came up with 10 things to do it. And then once I started taking it, I kept a journal for 30 days, and just what was changing in me. And I found certainly a lot of cognitive changes going on, even in the first 30 days, but also performance changes, physical changes. I could stay longer on my stationary bike. I could walk further. I was just better. I felt better. I slept better. I just was better all the way around. So that's what motivated me to do that. And talking with Susan several times was a help as well. So I guess writing is what I do to help myself think. So if I can write it, and I say, oh yeah, that's kind of what I think.
Well, it's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate all you've done.
It's been an honor.
That's wonderful. So that is one of the options. I don't know how many of you, did some of you get the email with the brain test links? Most of you got them?
No,
I didn't get one.
I didn't either.
Okay.
Neither.
And some people signed up more recently because I just sent them out after people had signed up. So please be sure that you did register at the link so that I have your email to send it to you. I sent a link with some brain tests. These are just little online tests that are free. The first two that I recommended won't even take you 5 minutes to do them. And there's 2 more that are optional. If you do all 4 of them, I think it'll still take less than 10 minutes. But I sent a scorecard so that you can write down what Patrick, I think your computer is squealing. So that you can write down your scores and get some idea of what is your baseline cognitive performance right now. So that's just a little tool. And then one of the other things that I would love to have you all look at before the next meeting is, let's see here. I will email you a brain health and habits questionnaire. It's a very simple little questionnaire, 12 questions, just to kind of see where you are in terms of your habits right now. And there's a little scoring information that's available there to give you just some general idea which areas might be important areas, the most important areas for you to invest in. And these are all, again, the types of areas that we're going to be discussing in the upcoming days. I really appreciated the discussion today and the good tips. I'm very open to ideas. Again, I'm trying to start with this masterclass as a way to convey information, but the head knowledge itself doesn't help if you don't have that purpose, have that passion, have that motivation to make a change in your life. So please let me know if you have other ideas of what could be done and what would help you. We'll be doing homework as we go along, and we will be doing this together as a group and supporting and encouraging each other. And I just want to remind you again, there is hope. There are things that can be done. All of the things we're going to talk about have substantive data to show that they do make a difference. They can improve your memory now, as well as help you for the future. So one of the things we're going to be talking about at the end is thoughts or attitudes. And thinking positively makes a big difference. We're actually telling our brain what to do. And not only having the thoughts, but actually declaring them. There is a lot of power in making declarations. So I wonder if you would join with me in reading this declaration. We're going to be reading it every day, just to tell ourselves and our brains how important they've been. They have gotten us through every day of our lives to this date. And so will you join with me in speaking out loud this declaration? I value my brain. I thank my brain for all it has
done for me.
I choose to invest in my health and my brain health. I will take action to ensure that I keep my memory.
Amen.
Very good. Very good. And then the homework, I'll be emailing you the Brain Health and Habits questionnaire. It will only take a couple minutes. I sent the 2 brain tests. I will resend them for anyone that hasn't received them. We are going to talk about stress a little bit down the road, but I think that's a good one to be thinking about in advance. Each of us have different areas that have caused stress in our life. So just to spend some time thinking about what stresses me. What are the areas in my life? It's a very individual thing, but stress, as we know, has issues for our body and our brain, can be stored in our body. So this is a personal exploration about your own life. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome to be with you. I look forward to working together to ensure optimal brain health, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon.
Thank you.
Susan.
Thank you very much.
Susan.
Really appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.